Welcome to the Authentically Successful Show. I'm Carol Schultz, founder and CEO of Vertical Elevation, a talent equity and leadership coaching and advisory firm. Listen at the end of the show for information about becoming my next guest on one of the most important podcasts for building thriving companies. Here we go. Joining me today is Bob Frady, co-founder and CEO of HazardHub, an Insurtech startup founded in 2016. HazardHub creates property-level national databases of geographic risk hazards, including earth, wind, fire, water-based, and man-made risks, as well as property characteristics. This data allows HazardHub to accurately score risk, and this risk data is freely available through their consumer site, freehomerisk.com. When they first started the business, Bob and his co-founders thought they'd be focused on the B2C market, but fairly quickly pivoted to the B2B space, serving insurance companies, inspection companies, and reporting companies. We interviewed Bob back in March of this year, and in August, HazardHub was acquired by Guidewire Software. So I thought this would be a great time for a follow-up. Bob, welcome again.
Hello, Carol. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you? More importantly, how are you?
That makes two of us.
So congratulations on being acquired.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Guidewire Software. I, of course, am quite familiar with it, but why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Guidewire Software and what it was about their offer approach that had you say, you know what, this is the right time to sell our company rather than going off on a different route, potentially to, growing it to be at a greater valuation, IPO, whatever that might be.
Okay. Guidewire is the leading policy administration system in the property and casualty insurance industry. High degree of expertise in claims and in policy management on the underwriting side. What they were missing was data to help their customers do a better job of risk analysis right at the very beginning of the quoting process. So we fit rather neatly into what they want to do. With HazardHub, we had some choices to make. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not. We're really good at starting things and getting things rolling. Going from 0 to 100 is one thing. Going from 100 to 10,000 is something else altogether. And we knew that we needed help to do that. So there's several paths you can go down. You can continue to bootstrap and build it slowly. You can take on funding from a third party and be in that sort of whirlwind, or you can look for a strategic partner to acquire your company. And as you can see from the lovely shade of gray, we are not the youngest cats. We are not the youngest cats in the barn. So given all of the things that we had to do, we said, well, a strategic acquisition is probably the way out for us. Ironically, we would have gotten more money for the business had we gone the financial route, but it meant a level of commitment, 7 to 8 years that was just we're old, it's just a little bit beyond where we necessarily want it to be.
And when you say the financial route, you're referring to institutional capital, yes?
Yeah. The growth equity kind of capital is alluring in many ways. You can get a higher valuation and all that stuff, but it's a path. It's a certain type of path that if we, some people like it and some people don't. We had at the very beginning of this business understood that we're going to grow it to a point where it's saleable, and that's because again, we don't really understand this whole financial world all that much.
Right.
It's like, when we started in business, venture capital was this weird thing that, few people talked about. And so we chose, it wasn't our wheelhouse. So we chose what we knew. We're very, very happy with the outcome and thrilled to be part of Guidewire.
Great. What is it about Guidewire that has you thrilled?
There's a couple of things, and we'll call it pre and post. We were very impressed with the CEO. He has a great vision for where he wants the company to be.
Yep.
And I think that Guidewire has been, some people would say that Guidewire is now legacy code. And I think that Guidewire recognizes that and needs to be able to do things better and innovate more and innovate harder. And Mike has been there probably for about a year and a half now, and he's really leading the charge with that whole innovation space. And that's where we come from. We come from the innovation space.
Right.
So, we just came off of the Connections customer event, and I'm more encouraged than ever by the ability to eliminate the difficulty in getting data into a system is something we're really looking forward to. A lot of times we deal with big carriers, and we had avoided big carriers because it's not enough to say that your data is good. Then they have to do an IT project to get the data into the system, which can be a whole nother order of magnitude more difficult than the actual decision of using your data. So with the integration into the Guidewire platform, it eliminates all of that. So it's an opportunity for HazardHub to grow even faster than we expected. So there's a real commitment to innovation.
Yeah.
The second thing is the people are just so nice. We read all the Glassdoor reviews and we're like, this must be a fake. This can't be. This is plants. And what we found is an enormous level of friendliness and interest and enthusiasm for what we do. And when you get bought, you give up the keys to the car and you can only hope that people drive it in the right direction. And so far, we've been very impressed by what we've seen from our friends, now our coworkers at Guidewire. It's been
must be those. Go on.
I could not have imagined that the landing spot would be as good as it has been.
It must be those Midwest niceties.
They are a Bay Area company, but they deal a lot with insurance companies. Yeah. And so, listen, a lot of times inside of insurance companies, the people are terrific. Yeah. Now, sometimes they have some processes that take a while to get around. But it's just, I thought we were making a good decision going in, and now we made a great decision going in.
So I have to say, when I heard the news, Bob, I was really delighted to see that not only that you were acquired, but that you had been acquired by a tech company, not a carrier. As we both know, so many Insurtechs, most that I can even think of off the top of my head, have been acquired by the carriers. And we both know the carriers not only move at the speed of a glacier, they don't really, I wouldn't really call them disruptive or, anything like that. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, listen. And had you been approached by carriers? I am curious now that this is a done deal, and not that you'd have to tell us who they are.
We always thought that the best acquisition would be from a carrier. Yeah. Because we would give a carrier such a unique pricing position that would be worth potentially hundreds of millions of dollars to them in both premium and loss avoidance. However, we were a little bit ahead of the curve on that one. And so we had a couple of carrier discussions, but they never really came to full fruition. And that's okay. And I don't blame the carriers for sitting back, waiting, taking a look at the text and saying, all right, who's going to be successful? Let's go snap them up with our excess capital. It's a great strategy. Is it good for the business in the long term? It's hard to say. But one of the things that we had a list of things when we sold. This is what we wanted in a company. And one of the things was the continued commitment to innovation. Because if they weren't going to continue to innovate, we weren't going to stay. Right. And I'm still interested to see this business grow even more. So yeah, we were pretty stoked. And a lot of people were surprised by the acquisition. They're like, wow, I saw the news and I was surprised. And it's like, what did you think? We were going to go to some other data company and just be another, thing on the list? Like, forget that. That's no fun. So the fact that it was technology based and it was committed to innovation, very exciting.
Yep. So what is your, are you being completely sucked into Guidewire as the Borg would do?
I've used that analogy more times in the last couple of months.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise. I mean, it's really a perfect analogy, right?
Yeah, it's again, when you sell a company, you many times get what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that we knew going in is that we represent something that they don't currently have.
Right.
And what do salespeople love but shiny new objects? And we're the shiny new object right now. So we're incredibly busy. I've traveled more in the last 3 months than I've ever traveled in a 3-month period. And but which is okay. I like it. It's fun.
No, be glad you could travel.
I know. Oh, this mask stuff, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I went from moving 100 miles an hour this way to 100 miles an hour that way, and with no rest in between. So I'm looking forward to the upcoming holidays because I'm really going to try to take a little time off.
So what does your life now look like as part of Guidewire? Are you under a, X number of year contract with them? What's your position? What does that look like for you?
Yep. It's typical. There's a 3-year schedule for us. It's one of those things where we made a commitment to them that we would stay on as part of the acquisition, because what else am I going to do? I sit around and I collect fire hydrants, for crying out loud. What kind of a fun person is that? So I thought about it. And that was one of the options that we had from a different buyer, is that they would just buy us and get rid of us. Well, then what am I going to do? It's only so much golf you can play, and it's just not that interesting. I'm too young to fully retire. So I'm on a contract with Guidewire, as well as John, my co-founder, and we're good. It's a little different now, though. I don't have to be involved in as many things, which takes a little bit of getting used to. But I get to focus on the things I really want to be part of now, which is the innovation and integration and thinking up new products and all sorts of fun stuff like that. The stuff I really like to do, I get to focus on more than all the
building
other
a
stuff
company.
I have to deal with.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a huge difference, right? Isn't there?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, building a company. And one of the reasons why we look to sell is because building a company is exhausting.
Yes.
And just physically and mentally exhausting. And some people really get off on that. And we had a shelf life for how hard we could go at that. And it's not that we hit it, but just, listen, as a friend of mine said, he said, take the money and get a therapist and learn to deal with it. So it was, it's pretty funny. But yeah, it's knock on wood, things are good.
So the integration of HazardHub into Guidewire, what makes it better? What makes that integration better than with a carrier, do you think? From a consumer standpoint, especially.
Well, if we did it just with a carrier, then that's one company who benefits. If we go into a platform, that's every company who's on the platform gets to benefit from
which
it.
Which are all the carriers, really, right?
Yeah, and we, we started this company because we wanted people to know their risk. It's why free home risk is still available. We want people to know, and we think that the future of insurance involves less in underwriting and more in risk management. Like, for example, I got a policy the other day, and I knew what all the risks were. But nobody ever talked about them during the acquisition process. And I'm like, why are insurance companies not doing this? Why are they not managing risk better? Because the best claim is the one you never get. And that's the kind of stuff that, my Roger Arneman, who I work for at Guidewire, gave an entire speech on this at the show. And it's something I'm sort of super stoked to be part of. Like, I want everyone to know what the risks are around their property. Whether they agree with me or not is another question. That's okay.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that right now.
All right. It's nuclear. Is it nuclear? Everybody gets all weirded out about nuclear.
No, it's not nuclear. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's a great segue. Because yesterday, when I got back home from riding the horses, I went online and I did a free home risk for my home. And there are a couple of things I want to ask you about. First of all, are these grades, and I'm going to go over the ones with you that I would absolutely agree with, and the ones that I'm like, I'm not so sure about that. So is this what the grades that I have for my home, are these the same grades that are going into the platform that the carriers are going to see when I reach out and decide I don't want to be with Travelers anymore? I want to find a different insurance carrier to insure my home?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
The free home risk report is a very simplified version of the data that we present.
Okay.
You can't dump 1,200 elements on someone and expect them to understand it. So we create the grades as sort of a super roll-up of all the segments that we have underneath it. So the carrier would get the grade, they would get the score, and then they would get all of the elements that were going into that score. And they may choose to see those differently than we do. For most of our grades, we try to use A's are the best 10%, F's are the worst 10%, and then BCD is sort of spread out in the middle. With certain elements, for like FEMA flood, if you're in a 100-year flood zone, you're an F. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
And some of them are a little more specialized, but for the most part, yes, the same things that you're seeing will be there, but they also get a whole lot more.
Well, of course. I mean, and one would expect that to be the case. So that said, I was really interesting. I got a couple of A's. Is all 3 A's.
All right.
Which, frankly, I think is not so good. Right?
Listen, it's not like your school report card where it's a cumulative grade average. Some are more important than others.
Right. Well, my A's were that I'm not in a fault, right? An earthquake fault or a USGS fault. That I'm, of course, very close to a firehouse, which as the crow flies is, I don't even think, a quarter of a mile away. And of course, fire hydrants, right? You and your OCD regarding fire hydrants. And then we get to fault earthquakes, which is interesting. It says I'm between 10 and 20 miles to a known fault. I didn't know that.
Yep.
And
you live in Colorado, right?
I do. I live in basically eastern Colorado, but not all the way east, but in eastern Colorado, yeah.
Check out your backyard and look for those giant mountains. Those giant mountains were formed by faults.
Right.
And so wherever you see hills or giant mountains, there's usually a fault nearby.
Very, very hilly area where I am. I mean, I'm, from the... Even what?
Even in Appalachia. There's a lot of faults over there because the Appalachian Mountains are just older, and the geology is slightly different. But but those were B's, so it's pretty good risk, right? My greatest risk I thought was kind of interesting was I got to see on fracking earthquakes. Yeah, and that sort of surprised me, frankly. So how is it that? I mean, does that mean there's fracking going on like right near me, or that I'm just within X number of miles to where there is fracking, and we know there is fracking here in Colorado? Yes, you are. We don't say that fracking causes earthquakes, but what we do say is that there happen to be a lot of earthquakes where there's fracking. Yeah. And the good news is that they are not generally really big earthquakes. They tend to be smaller. They tend to be the kind that freak people out rather than do damage. They do damage to your psyche rather than your house. Right. Because they just don't have the geological power that a fault-based earthquake would.
Well, like you have out where you are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like it's a distance to an area of fracking.
Okay, so there were actually two things. I'm not going to go through this step by step, but there were a couple of things I did want to ask you about specifically. Sure. And one was, of course, and this did not surprise me that I get an F for hail.
Oh, yeah.
As does everyone where I live. In fact,
Yeah.
my last big hail damage was in 2012, and I now have another claim just 9 years later. I was hoping to make it 10 years, which is, and they require you to put on a 50-year roof, which of course is just laughable because that's never going to happen where I live.
No.
Never.
No.
You're lucky to make it 10 years to your next roof. And windows, and I've got, I have a good bit of damage this time.
The problem is, if you have a hail event and there's a hole in your roof, people, you can't wait for someone because the builders don't specialize in a 50-year roof. So we can put a roof on tomorrow, or you can wait 6 months and get a 50-year roof. Well, guess what people are going to choose?
I chose wait 6 months, by the way, but yeah.
Put the big old tarp over the house?
Yeah, no, I don't have a hole in my roof either. If I did, that would be different, right? But I mean, the roofs that we put on here are still really, really good. Even the storm we had here in 2012, which was, I thought it was worse than the one we just had in August. When we have hail, this has just been the worst one I've seen us have in a long, long time. And so, that's of course, I think the main reason my insurance is so high. Not just me, because that's considered, of course, an act of God, but everyone who lives here. Right?
Yep. It's built into the base rate. Yep.
That's right. Of course it is. But here's the really interesting thing is I got a D on radon. And I know why, because there's so much rock in Colorado. Now, the question I would ask you is, when I'm looking for insurance, are they seeing, 40 pages of that I have a D rating on radon, and I'm getting punished by that on my insurance because I have a whole house radon mitigation system? Right. Do I need to actually, when I reach out to a new carrier, say, by the way, I have a terrible risk of radon, but I have a whole house radon mitigation system. So you need to lower my rate.
Yeah, it's generally not a peril that property insurers
right.
They don't necessarily give you a higher or lower premium based upon that.
Gotcha.
We put radon in there because we're a consumer company first. The fact that you have a whole house radon system tells me that we were right. But it's, for example, I bought a house not too long ago, and it had elevated risk of radon. So I went to the agent, and of course they don't disclose any of this stuff. I said, "Is there a risk of radon here?" And they said, "Well, maybe." I said, "Well, let's get a test." People that lived in the house before that for 60 years as a family, different generations in the same family lived there for 60 years with elevated radon risk and had no clue. So we had to have a whole house system put in. And so part of the reason why we started this company isn't because we want insurance companies to do a better job. That's one thing. It's because we want people to protect themselves.
Sure.
Your house is your biggest investment for most people. What can you do to help protect your house? And what can you do to help protect your life? One of the saddest things I ever do is when I go through wildfires and perimeters,
right?
And I read all the stories about, well, yeah, we thought it wasn't a big deal, so we stayed here, and then by the time we could do anything, it was too late, and now mom and dad are gone because we didn't act fast enough. Part of our mission as a company is to give you this information so that in case something bad does happen, like you can do things to help mitigate that risk. Get out of Dodge.
Right. Well,
put your car in the garage.
Right. It's, and it's the same thing because of course I got a D on Wildfire. Again, also, I'm almost surprised I didn't get an F. Because I live
I can make it an F if you want. So.
No, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But it's because I live in an area that, of course, the aspens are slowly dying because with climate change, aspens can't live at my altitude anymore of 6,500 feet. They need to be, at least 1,000 or more feet higher than where I am. But we are littered with ponderosa pines and blue spruce. Littered with mostly ponderosa pines, which of course are a great fire hazard. And of course, I'm in Colorado where it's very, very dry. And I wonder because outside of places like here, California, where you have great wildfire risk, or shall I just say the whole Western United States anymore, people don't understand what defensible space means, right?
Right.
And because they don't understand what wildfire risk is. And,
Mhm.
I wonder, and it's just interesting because you know so much about this, do the carriers, when the carrier looks at me, says, yeah, of course they're at great risk of wildfire. So just like with hail, I have to pay a higher
Mhm.
rate because of that. We know the fires that have happened in Colorado. Certainly, we were very lucky this year because it was very wet here this year. Very, very fortunate. But
Yep.
what I've never noticed a carrier doing when I am looking for shopping around is, by the way, do you have defensible space created around your home? And I wonder why they don't do that if that's the case.
There's two reasons.
Okay.
Number one is because the most commonly used wildfire model is not ours, and it's not really all that great. Doesn't actually accurately reflect the risk of properties.
Yeah.
And
That doesn't
so
surprise
a lot
me.
of times they're just getting bad data.
Mm-hmm.
But the second is that we're starting to see change because you're in a D zone, but if you have 10 feet of vegetative clearance around your house, your risk is similar to a B zone.
Oh,
Now, there's
interesting.
still some elevated risk, but clearing away things from your property really does make a difference. Now, people don't want to a lot of times. They're like, I live in the woods. That's what I do. So, and that's okay. But as long as you're aware of, here's what some of the things that are happening. And what a lot of our clients are doing is they're saying, okay, F's we kind of want to avoid or space them out. D's, a lot of companies will just say no. So what they'll do is they'll say, let's do a more specialized underwriting. Let's pull in the satellite imagery. Let's determine what the siding is, the window, all that stuff. And then write based upon that. So it's getting to the point that should be better. Like, for example, each pane in your window slows a fire entrance into your house by 15 minutes. And a lot of times a wildfire doesn't take that long to go past.
Right.
So if you've got a fast moving wildfire and you've got triple paned windows, that gives you 45 minutes before that window breaks.
Right.
And in which case all bets are off in survivability of your property.
Right. Well, and of course that's what happened in the Black Forest fire that we had here a number of years ago. One of my good friends lives down there, and her street was one of the first to go.
Yeah.
And she said they literally, I think she had under 30 minutes to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's have a go kit. If you know you're in a bad area, have a go kit.
That's exactly what she did.
Load your stuff to the internet that you really want to keep and get out of Dodge.
Yep. And the only reason, by the way, she had that was because of the Waldo Canyon fire the year prior. That they were scared to death was going to jump Interstate 25 to get onto the east side of the highway, and then it would have hit the forest, and that would have been that the year before. And as a consequence, she was so much better prepared. She changed her insurance. And, but she still, I still hear her whine to this day. Oh gosh, so sad. I don't live in the big four. I've lost so many trees on my property. I'm like, yeah, but your house isn't going to probably burn down again.
Yeah. It's a devastating loss.
I can't imagine. She lost everything, except her animals.
Even a tree through the roof of your house.
Yeah.
People look at claims as sort of like, well, it's part of the cost of doing business, but it's such a life interruption that it's a tough thing to tell people, hey, guess what? It's just a matter of time. And that's always a tough message. The F zones are always the one that get us the worst level of disagreement, but it's true. We didn't make it up because we don't like you. We made it up because that's what the science says.
Yeah. Well, and I can't help it that there's hail, that I'm in an F zone for hail. It is what it is.
Yep.
I live in my own little weather pattern. Umbrella. Yeah, exactly. So has your entire employee base stayed on with Guidewire?
Yep, everyone. So
good.
One of the things that we did in our business that I'm most proud of is we made all of our employees shareholders. So when the sale happened, except for one who came on right before, which I still feel kind of bad about.
Is what it is. Timing is everything.
They all shared in the reward, and that to me was one of them. Listen, I could have made an extra pile of cash, but I'd rather a whole bunch of other people share in that. They did the work. They made us great. So, they should get rewarded as well. And I was super stoked about that. That was a good day. And as a small business owner, you get to decide how you want your business to be. And that's one of the things that we had decided that was really important to us. And to see it come true and see it come to fruition, gosh, it was just really immensely satisfying.
Well, and I know, and you and I have been having this conversation, seems like for, 2 years or more now. And it's really, it's so nice to see the good outcome, right? Of all that hard work for somebody, especially when
it's you.
Well, right. That's sure, we'd all like that to happen for ourselves, but all I can say is it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, right? A nicer group of guys, you and John.
Well, thank you.
And no, well, listen, that's how I feel. Not everyone in the Insurtech sector do I feel like that. Okay, there are many. I know many like you do, and there are a lot of wonderful, wonderful people. But there are some that I'm like, you know what, you just don't deserve this.
One of the most surprising outcomes of this is right. The sale happened right before ITC. And so Guidewire ended up at the last minute getting a space so we could have a party at ITC. And ITC has been critical for us in terms of growing. It's a wonderful conference and love it. And so we end up having this event. It gets oversubscribed, which is always nice. But so much of the same things that you just said, people told us over and over and over again. And it's very satisfying as a founder to know, one of the key tenets for me has always been the golden rule. Treat people as you want them to treat you.
That's right.
And that was part of our core tenets as a business is we're gonna deal with you openly, honestly, and fairly.
Yeah.
And gosh, it's come back to us and so nice to hear all those things. It's very flattering, but it's what we wanted to build. I think that when you have clear tenets about what you want to be as a business,
right,
they come true. So be careful what you wish for, because they do come true.
Yeah, you're right. And I've interviewed a number of Insurtech founders. I interview primarily founders, period. But many of those, because of my knowledge of, so many people in the sector, and all the ones I've interviewed are, just like you. I wish them nothing but the very, very, very best, because they really deserve it. There are other Insurtech founders I would not be inclined to interview, I have to say.
Deserve is a dangerous word.
No.
Because I kind of look at it like the people who get, they walk across the street and get run over by a drunk driver.
Well,
do they deserve that? No,
of course not.
Like, so did we deserve this outcome? No. Did we work to put this outcome into place? Oh yeah, we certainly did. And opportunity met market need, met conditions, and a lot of good things happened. Do we deserve it? I don't choose whether we did or didn't. I just take it out of the equation.
I hear what you're saying.
Like it's the wrong word to use.
Yeah, and that's okay. And I can live with that disagreement. Maybe given a little more thought, I'd come up with a better word to use in that in place of that. But you listen. It's I guess for me, the people that I see who are givers, who have built customer-centric organizations, let's call it that, for example, who really understand the value of, if you build an organization that is focused on the customer's needs, their desires, what is going to work for them and make them happy. I mean, yes, there are other things involved, like you have to have the right people to do that. But if you ultimately build a customer-centric organization, you will have hopefully a better probability of a positive outcome.
I think it's even simpler than that in some ways. Yeah. My life fundamentally changed a few years ago, right when I started the business. I started asking one question: how can I help? And just opening your mind, because listen, helping people involves sometimes doing things, and sometimes people don't like doing things.
Well, or if you don't feel like you have the time to do it.
So the question I always put in front of my customers is, or prospects, is how can I, or even people I meet, how can I help? And sometimes I have to say no, I can't help in certain ways. But most of the time, people are so thirsting for someone to actually say that to them. They're like, I can't believe you asked this question, because I've been waiting for people to ask me this question for years. And so that's what we do. And we think, well, we built a flexible technology stack. What can we do? Move this around. Here we go. We're done. And it can be that fast. And people are shocked. They're like, you listened to me? You took what I had to say into consideration? You didn't just tell me that you're a genius and you're a moron if you don't follow me? Yeah. It's like, just be willing to extend help. And don't make it, a false promise. You actually have to actually believe it. But gosh, there's always room. There's always room for people who want to help. And this is insurance. Insurance is built on helping people.
Supposedly
puts into a pot.
Right. Yeah.
And the fact that you have that reaction is common, but it's sad.
Of course it is.
It's like, what a
of course it is. I mean, I'm not here to say that's the reaction I should be having. Yeah. I mean, I could tell you stories, and I'm not going to waste our time here to do that. But, of having to deal with these big carriers and their nonsense.
Right.
Because, and currently on this last storm, the company who's doing the work for me has said, the two worst companies are yours and another one to deal with. They don't ever want to pay.
Yep.
Why the hell am I paying them thousands and thousands of dollars every year?
Yep.
For the time, that's the whole point. For the time when I need it, that's what insurance is for. All they're worried about is their combined ratio. It's all they care about. It seems.
Well, I think sometimes that does happen. One of the reasons why I'm excited to now be part of Guidewire comes from claims. We traditionally don't work in claims, but if we know that you're in F zone, there was a hail event, pay the claim. It should be automated. Yeah. That's, and it's within a certain amount. Pay the claim. No questions. And that's the whole sort of triage that we are really excited about helping to build. And that's the kind of cool stuff. I still want to move this industry forward. Yeah. It takes forever. It's like flying into the sun backwards. You
always have some little gem to say.
The actuarial view is like looking through the rearview mirror.
Right.
And so you fly into the sun backwards, but eventually we'll get there. And I have hope. I love the industry. I love the people in the industry. It's the most efficient societies, or the most productive societies, have the most robust insurance infrastructure. Yeah. Because insurance allows you to take a chance. Yes. And that is critical to the well-being of our society. And I want to be part of that. So that's what's cool about this stuff.
Is there anything else, Bob, that you would say that you would want to add that we haven't talked about that has made you successful at, building this company, HazardHub, bringing that to fruition, and then ultimately selling it off to a very cool technology company?
Gosh, I would say that there are a number of things, but the number one thing is don't make it about you. Make it about them. Understand what your clients are trying to do and relieve the pain. It all comes down to pain management. If you can relieve someone's pain, they will be your customer. If you can do it in a way that makes them almost happy that you're doing it, then you can be a very successful business. So there's number one, is make it about them and not about you. It's not about your stupid ego. It's not about you being a billionaire, whatever. It's like, it's just make it about them. And the second is that having started a business now when I was 54 years old, it was way easier to start this business than I ever thought. Now I'm like, let's start 2 more. And I was petrified of that until I had to start a business. And bet on yourself. Just bet on yourself. If you really think that you have a better answer, if you think you can help people better, bet on yourself. There's nothing like it. If you fail, at least you know that you left it all on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask for. And sometimes you win the championship and sometimes you don't. But at least get out there and mix it up and try. That's number one. And then the third thing is, whatever you're not good at, find people who are good at it and let them do it. So, get rid of the stuff that you don't like to do the stuff that you like to do. And it's a 3-point play, if you will. But listen, we had a good outcome. It doesn't make us prophets or anything like that. It's just you work hard, have fun, and it doesn't feel like you're working at all.
Well, I can't say anything more beyond that. So, Bob Frady, co-founder and CEO of HazardHub. As always, I just delight in talking with you either on or off the record. So thanks again for this follow-up call. I sure appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime. If you need my help, you let me know.
Thank you for listening to Authentically Successful. If you are a successful founder or CEO who would like to be on this program, please visit verticalelevation.com/podcast/apply. If you learned something from this interview and it made a difference, please share it on LinkedIn or Twitter. You can also do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend. And if you know of someone who would be a great guest, tag them on LinkedIn or Twitter to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Authentically Successful. I love seeing your posts and great suggestions. Lastly, we are regularly putting out new episodes and content. And to make sure you don't miss any episodes, please subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. If you want to know more, go to our website, verticalelevation.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. This is Carol Schultz. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.